What's up, guys? Welcome to this week's Best Bets episode for UFC Macau Song Yadong versus Deiveson Figueiredo, where I'll be discussing the most confident picks, the lock of the week, the underdog of the week, and some parlays that I like. Starting off with the most confident picks, we got Cody Haddon, Sergey Pavlovich, Mingyang Zhang, and Song Yadong. Starting off with Cody Haddon, fighting my boy Iori. Cody Haddon, he's a high volume striker. He's durable, he's well rounded, and he has strong cardio. And he's fighting Iori. He's an explosive power puncher and he's dangerous in the pocket exchanges. But I really believe Haddon is a solid prospect with good boxing combinations, strong pace, and reliable takedown defense. He's active with his strikes, he's durable, and he mixes things up really well. And it just makes him the more complete fighter overall in this matchup. Iori, he's dangerous when he can brawl in close and land big counters, but his style relies heavily on power shots. And over time, I feel Haddon's volume, his cardio, and his technical striking and his ability to just mix things up in his overall game, it should start taking over. Iori, he has the experience edge, but after multiple UFC fights, it feels like we know his ceiling, right? While Haddon still looks like a fighter with room to grow, he has still a lot more to prove in this matchup, right? So I think Cody Haddon's going to have the better pace, the cleaner striking, and the overall more well-rounded game, and that should lead him to a victory here. Moving on to our next most confident pick, Sergey Pavlovich versus Deiveson Teixeira. Pavlovich is an elite power puncher. He's got some patient pressure as well, and his striking game is truly evolving. Whereas Teixeira, he's a huge heavyweight and he's dangerous early on, but he's not as sharp as Sergey Pavlovich's previous opponents or Sergey Pavlovich himself. And he's got some big cardio concerns, does Deiveson Teixeira, right? Pavlovich has evolved from just a pure first round knockout artist into a more composed and strategic striker. He still carries massive power, but now fights with much more patience and shot selection, right? He's actually picking his shots now. And Teixeira, he's dangerous early with his size and his power, but he slows down when the fight extends. And his style isn't nearly as technical as someone like Volkov, who gave Pavlovich some trouble, right? So if he can't get Pavlovich out of there early, the fight should start shifting quickly into Pavlovich's favor. Pavlovich's experience, his cardio, his pressure, and his more cleaner striking should just take over the fight as the fight goes on. Once Teixeira slows down, Pavlovich will likely start landing bigger and bigger shots as the fight goes on. So I'm going to say Pavlovich, he's much more technical throughout the whole fight. He's much more proven as well. And he should break Teixeira down and find the finish in this matchup. Moving on to Mingyang Zhang versus Alonzo Menifield. Mingyang Zhang has massive power. He's aggressive and he's dangerous in exchanges. And Menifield, he's a powerful striker himself, but he's got questionable durability. So once these two collide, I see Menifield going down, right? This matchup likely turns into a striking battle, and that favors Zhang. In my opinion, both guys, they're willing to engage and they're going to throw heavy shots. But Zhang appears to be carrying the much more devastating power. Zhang's recent loss, it came from a very disciplined version of Johnny Walker, using movement and leg kicks and using his movement and using his leg kicks, right? It's not the wild firefight that everyone expected leading into that matchup. But that doesn't change the fact that Zhang is still extremely dangerous when opponents stand and trade with him. Menifield, he has knockout power too, but he's been stopped multiple times by heavy hitters, and he's willing to stand and trade with these guys. He usually chooses to strike even against dangerous punchers, right? So if he fights that way again, like how he usually fights, Zhang should eventually land the bigger power shot. The power advantage and the aggressive style should lead to a knockout victory for Mingyang Zhang in this matchup. Moving on to our final most confident pick, Song Yadong fighting Deiveson Figueiredo. Yadong, he's fast. He's a technical boxer with strong takedown defense. He's entering his prime, only 28 years old, whereas Figueiredo, he's a former champion. He's a dangerous veteran, but still, he's slowing down, and Yadong looks like just seems to be the younger, faster, and more complete fighter at this stage in his career, right? He's been sharp against high-level competition. He uses clean jabs. He's got fast combinations, puts the pressure on, and he's patient to pick opponents apart. Figueiredo, he's still respected because of his past accomplishments, but he hasn't looked like the same fighter lately against elite competition, right? His timing and his explosiveness, they don't seem as dangerous as they once were. Stylistically, this favors Yadong. He has the athleticism and wrestling base to defend the takedowns of Figueiredo. If Figueiredo chooses to go that route, he can keep the fight standing, control the striking exchanges with speed and volume. So the clear pick is Song Yadong. He has faster hands, better movement, and overall youth advantage should lead to a dominant striking performance. So that concludes the most confident picks. Moving on to the lock of the week, Jake Matthews fighting Charleston Harris, right? Jake Matthews, technical, durable. He's in his prime right now, well-rounded. Whereas Harris, he's aggressive and he's dangerous with power and submissions, but he's very hittable and his durability is not the best whatsoever. Matthews looks like to be in this matchup the more complete fighter here. He's still in his prime. He has solid wins recently and continues to show good striking, good grappling, and composure against quality competition. While Harris, he brings chaos and heavy hands, but he's been knocked out multiple times recently, and that tends to leave way too many openings in his striking defense, right? His brawling style plays right into Matthews' cleaner, more technical approach, right? With better footwork, timing, and overall defense, Matthews should be able to control this fight, land consistently, and avoid the dangerous moments coming back at him. So Jake Matthews, cleaner striker, better composure, and overall skill advantage that all should carry him to a win in this matchup. That's why he's lock of the week. Moving on to underdog of the week, Su Mudarji, underdog of the week. Guys, Mudarji, he's long, he's a technical striker, he's got excellent range control, improving wrestling, whereas Perez, he's an aggressive pressure fighter and he can be dangerous in the pocket, but he's so limited when it comes to these rangy types of fighters, right? He's limited at range. Mudarji's style matches up really well here. He's patient on the outside. He uses his reach effectively, and he excels at sniping opponents as they try to close the distance, right? With major reach advantage here, he should be able to control the range with jabs, kicks, teep kicks, and knees up the middle. Perez will likely try to pressure forward and work in his boxing or his wrestling. But unlike some of his past opponents, Mudarji is much better at staying disciplined and not lingering in the pocket, right? Mudarji's not going to stay in the pocket long enough to get hit with counter shots like how Charles Johnson did. I can see this fight looking like how Su Mudarji picked apart Jesus Aguilar, right? If Perez struggles to close the distance cleanly, he'll end up eating shots repeatedly while trying to force exchanges, right? So Mudarji, he has much better range management in this matchup for sure, cleaner striking and improved takedown defense. It all should lead him to have a strong performance, I believe, here versus Alex Perez. So concludes underdog of the week. Moving on to the parlay breakdown. Starting off with the safety lock, we got Matthews and Song Yadong. Jake Matthews and Song Yadong minus 175 for the safety lock. Matthews, he has the cleaner, more technical striking style against an aging Harris, while Song Yadong, he's younger, faster, and far sharper. Excuse me. Than the current version of Figueiredo. Both should control their fight with volume, timing, and overall skill. Moving on to the ultimate lock, Jake Matthews and Sergey Pavlovich. Minus 160 for the ultimate lock. Pavlovich, he simply levels above in terms of experience, power, and composure, while Jake Matthews, he should just piece up Harris apart over time using his footwork and boxing. One parlay leg is technical and control. The other one is heavyweight violence, pretty much, right? So moving on to the affordable juice section. Rodrigo Vera and Mingyang Zhang at plus 150 for the affordable juice. Zhang has fight-ending power, right? Against a hittable Minifield, and Vera, he brings a strong value in a matchup where his pressure and his activity, it can take over. I think it's good plus money. It's a good plus money combo with knockout upside. I think Vera, he's a good prospect. He has a win over Juan Diaz, and Juan Diaz just submitted Malcolm Wellmaker. So I feel it's a strong prospect, mixing him up with fight-ending power in Zhang, right? So moving on to the 5 most confident picks at plus 250, you got Matthews, Song, Pavlovich, Haddon, and Zhang. At plus 250, these are your core reads, in my opinion. Matthews, cleaner and younger. Song, he has the speed and technical edge. Pavlovich, he's got the experience and the power. Haddon, he's got volume and cardio. Zong, he's a massive knockout threat against a very chinny opponent, right? So every fighter here has a clear stylistic advantage and strong momentum coming into this matchup in their specific matchups, right? Moving on to the plus 145 fun duo parlay, Jing Nang and Meng Ding. Right, This one is more about upside and momentum. Jing Ning, she has experience coming into the UFC. She's composed in front of the home crowd, excited to make her UFC debut. While Ming Ding, he brings aggression and finishing ability. It's fun value parlay with two live prospects coming into this matchup, right? So moving on to the Underdog City parlay, Su Mudarji and Loma Lugbumi plus 340. Mudarji's range striking and reach, it could completely frustrate Perez, and that's what I believe will happen. While Loma's technical striking and movement always makes her dangerous in close fights, right? I do believe she can keep the fight standing, or if not, at least put up enough volume and damage to the point where she wins enough of the rounds. So it's a high risk parlay, but both have stylistic paths to upset their matchups, right, and get the victory. So that does conclude this week's best bets for UFC Macau. Hope you guys found this helpful. Till next time, peace.